Hi, my name's Justin Largen. I'm here with MISSILEBAITS out on a nice Virginia river to talk about some of my favorite ways to catch bass this time of year. And specifically today, I'm going to be talking about how I like to target smallmouth primarily and largemouth in these small rivers, non-tidal rivers specifically. So fall time of the year, you know, bass, it's a transition time. These smallmouth, they've been up in shallow water where there's more oxygen. And throughout the fall, as we get closer to these cold nights and as we get closer to winter, these fish are going to be transitioning away from that shallow, sort of faster moving stuff towards these deeper holes where they're going to live for the summer. But this is the time of year for me when topwater is king. It's an absolutely, I mean, I don't know if there's a more fun way to catch them than on top. And right now we're kind of the early stages of the transition. Something that I've been throwing, you know, all summer long is a plopper style bait. This is a Chapo. It's the 90 size. I really like this bait. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, you know, when it comes to gear. But what I like is a little bit different than what a lot of other people throw. A lot of guys will throw this on braid. My setup, I've got a medium action rod that's got a little bit stiffer tip. It's a fast action tip. So I'm throwing it with mono. I think this is 14. I'll throw somewhere between 14 and 17 pound mono when I'm throwing this smaller guy. And it really, especially when you're in clear water, I like these ghost type colors. I know a lot of guys that'll throw the big baits, and I've started experimenting more with your bigger sizes, your 110s, your 130s. And for me, you will get some very big bites with those. I will still catch big fish with my little one. And I feel like the hookup ratio is better. Those smallmouth, you know, they don't have that same bucket mouth like a largemouth. And a lot of times they'll come up and hit these baits with the nose, they'll slap at it. And this smaller bait, the hooks are pretty close together. They have an easier time, I think, of getting more of that bait in their mouth and getting a good hook in them. The bigger ones, again, you can still catch a lot of fish on them. I know guys that love them. Those bigger sizes I've been playing with, and I do catch fish, but I feel like I lose more than I do with that smaller bait. And if I'm fishing dirtier water, that's a situation where I might think about going to a bigger size. Another bait that you can throw that's kind of a complement to this Chapo style bait or this plopper style bait is a buzz bait. You can do a lot of the same things with them. Buzz bait's gonna be a little more weedless. So if I'm gonna throw a buzz bait, maybe I'm fishing laydowns and I wanna put it right up against that laydown and actually bump the tree with that blade. That's something I could do with a buzz bait, and I've got less of a chance of getting it snagged than I do with all these treble hooks. And I feel like if the fish are committing to the bait, like if I catch a couple and they've got that bait way down in the throat, they're really eating it good, that buzz bait with that one big hook, I feel like I get a better land ratio with that than with trebles. Now, flip it around, if it's a day where maybe they're half-heartedly eating it, they come up and slap at it, that's a day where I might stick with that plopper style bait, because if they come up and slap at it, they still might get one of those trebles. But that has to be my number one choice. I absolutely love fishing that bait. You can catch some giant fish, giant smallmouth in particular with that bait. Second, and this is another bait that you can catch them with throughout the summer, but for me, it really comes into its own in the fall, the walking style bait. There's a bunch of different companies that make good ones. I like this Sammy. I think it's a 100 size. It's a relatively newer model. I like it. It's got 3 hooks. If one comes up and slaps at it, I feel like there's a lot more surface area that those hooks are coming, and I got a good chance of getting a hook in that fish. But for whatever reason, this time of year, that walking the dog action really turns those fish on. As the days start to get shorter, you know, the temps start to drop, that bait is an absolute killer. You know, with smallmouth fishing, you know, just like with the plopper, you know, you can throw these big sizes of ploppers. I think that's a 110. You know, you don't have to go too crazy with colors. Black, white, you know, that bone color. I like these if there's a little bit of color in the water. I like the ghost colors when it's clear. And it's the same for these walking baits. This is kind of a bone color with some chrome on the side, some flash, good all around color. If I'm fishing super clear water, super finicky fish, I'll switch up to something like a ghost minnow, translucent color. It's not going to have quite the same presence as the other one in the water. And one of the reasons that I like that particular bait, it's a little more finessey. It's got a little bit tighter tighter S, I guess, that it makes when it's walking, or more of a Z maybe. It walks a little narrower, and if I'm fishing faster current, I can snap the rod tip and I can get good action out of that bait, more so than if I'm going to a full-size spook. Where I like a spook, or I've got some, I've got some other, these are the Strike King Sexy Dogs. I like these two. Bigger bait, you know, the full-size version with trebles. I like these if, again, I'm facing some dirtier water, or if I'm out there and trying to call fish up from a little bit deeper water. You'd be surprised. I mean, fish smallmouth that are the size of this bait will come up and smack this thing. But you'll catch some really big fish on this. Again, it has better drawing power, I think, than the smaller Sammy. But you really can't go wrong with either of those. I think Zara Spook, the Spook Junior is a really good one also. It's about the same size as this Sammy. So number 2 for me, staying with the Topwaters, has got to be those walking baits. So shifting gears a little bit, and a spoiler, most of my baits here, they're going to be power fishing baits. You know, fish tend to be aggressive. You know, that they know that cold weather's coming. When that water's cold, they've got a slow metabolism. They don't need to eat as much, but it's kind of like a bear. They're packing on pounds for the winter. So they are feeding heavily this time of year. So I like increasing my odds, putting a moving bait in front of as many fish as I can. So for number 3, I like a chatterbait. And there's guys that will swear by a bigger chatterbait. There's times where I'll throw a bigger one, but I've been throwing this little chatterbait mini max for about a year now, and this thing absolutely murders river smallmouth. It's a little bit smaller profile. It's a little bit smaller hook, but it's still got a thick gauge, thick diameter. I do not lose many fish on this. Now I throw it with a medium heavy rod that's got a parabolic action, you know, a moderate action to it. That helps when those fish slap it. It keeps me from jerking the bait away from them. But these baits, they make it in a 1/4 ounce, 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce. My favorites, you know, if I'm fishing real shallow water or I'm trying to keep the bait, you know, just under the surface and move it pretty quick, I like that 1/4 ounce. I like the 3/8 ounce. It's probably the one that I start with. If I'm fishing a little bit deeper water, it's just a good go-to all around. I fish the 1/2 ounce if I'm getting a little deeper, but most of my time I like with these two smaller sizes. And on the back here, I've got a Spunk Shad. This is the 3.5 inch one that Hog Farmer makes. Just an absolutely perfect trailer. That tail just kicks like crazy. You'll have, you know, sunfish come up and bite that tail off. It has a lot of drawing power, and it's a little bit smaller. Again, it doesn't have quite the same vibration as your full-size chatterbait like your jackhammer, but it still has a good thump. I'm typically throwing it on 14 or 15 pound fluorocarbon, and that helps me feel it a little bit better than your standard 17 to 20 pound fluoro. But that is something they can get in their mouth, and a lot of times they've got it hooked very deep, and I feel like those fish are coming in the boat. You know, they'll still hit a big chatterbait. I know guys that, you know, say I'm out there trying to catch a kicker fish. I've caught a lot of fish already. I really want to target a big one. I can go to that full-size jackhammer. But for me, I find that I miss a lot of fish. They'll slap at it. There's more of that tail. There's more surface area that doesn't have hook coverage on it, if that makes sense. So I really like these mini max. What else? Number 4, staying in that power fishing. I like a spinnerbait. For river fishing, I'm almost always throwing a double willow. It just works better in the current for me than those other sizes. A Colorado, it's just got so much pull and lift. You know, you start switching to a Colorado kicker blade, or double Colorados, or even the Indiana style. It has too much lift for me. I like these willows. I'll throw a 3/8 a good bit, but I found another, you know, Z-Man chatterbait that I really like, a Finesse one, that works in shallow water. It's something that I can burn pretty quick through shallow water. It's I think they call it the Finesse sling blades maybe, but a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait, much smaller than what most guys are throwing. It's a little tricky to cast this bait with bait casting gear. So what I'll do is throw that same Spunk Shad trailer on the back of it, and having that trailer, it adds just enough weight to where it casts a little better. It gives those fish something to key in on. And I've caught a lot of fish this summer, leading into this fall with a spinnerbait like that. I like these. They make some really clear, sort of translucent colors that work great in clear water. Just like the other baits, I like going to something that's a little bit louder as the water dirties up. And it's hard to go wrong with a spinnerbait. I'll typically throw it without a trailer, especially if I'm spending some time, I'm finding them in laydowns. That trailer hook tends to catch in the laydowns for me. But if I have some fish short striking it, slapping at it, and I'm not hooking them, that's when I'll switch and I will add a trailer on there. But that double willow spinnerbait is very good. And my last pick, we'll say number 5, is a little bit different. There's a lot of times where you can catch them with those moving baits. You catch a lot of fish that, like I said, they're aggressive. But there's some days where it's just the fishing's off. It's tough, especially, the river that I'm on today is real shallow and clear. You can see the bottom pretty much everywhere. That's when I'm gonna go with some finessier stuff. And I'm almost always gonna have a spinning rod in the kayak with me. I like it the days where I don't have to pick it up, but this is a bite getter. When it's tough, the spinning rod, light line, light wire hooks is the way to go. And something that I've really enjoyed playing with this year, this is the magic worm, the mini size. And I'm actually rigging it like a shaky head. You can do a couple different things with it. The shaky head is kind of my go-to. I'll use a lightweight 1/8 ounce or a 1/16 ounce. And I'll actually just use that Ned head that Missile makes like a shaky head. You thread the bait on, turn it, pop the hook in. It's weedless. I've got typically 8-pound line to a 15-pound braid leader, 15-pound braid main line. I like that 8-pound leader. You can get away with 6 at times, but that is a killer bait when it's tough, you need to get bites. Middle of the day, this can be good. A lot of times, if you've got an overcast day or early and late, these fish are more aggressive, they're roaming around. When the sun gets up, a lot of times they're gonna hug rocks, they're gonna sit in a shade pocket from overhanging trees, they'll get right up underneath the laydown and in a shady, dark area, up underneath boulders. Shade is big in when you have those bright sunny days, and when you can drop this bait down in there, it's a way to get some bites when those fish won't chase the other stuff. The stuff that, to me is more fun. A couple other things you can do with this. You can use rig it Neko style. Just use a real small hook. And I've got, I think, a 32nd ounce weight somewhere. But with a 32nd ounce Neko weight, you stick that in the head, rig it wacky style with that Neko hook. It's another way if the fish aren't reacting to something on the bottom, maybe they're feeding up, that slow fall in that bait can be really, really good. You can also throw this on a drop shot. I like a 1/0, or size 1 or a size 2. It's a tiny wire hook. I'm using the same setup, a 7-foot medium action rod, that light line, and that even with that light line, this thin, super sharp hook is going to penetrate that worm, and you're going to stick almost every fish, and they're going to stay on. Now you're going to have to fight them a little bit different with this tackle. You can, when you have the bait cast gear, a little bit heavier tackle, you can horse those fish a little more. You definitely want to be careful. Make sure you've got your drag set fairly loose so that those fish are going to pull and your drag is going to give before your line breaks. But that mini magic worm is a great finesse bait for this time of year. So that's my 5 picks. They're definitely not the only 5 baits you can catch them on, but that's the ones I like to use to tackle fish this time of year.